The door to the studio was heavy and glass, streaked with fingerprints and dust. My hands were shaking as I pushed it open, my sketchbook clutched so tightly that my knuckles blanched. I could hear voices inside, other students, my peers, the professor. Laughter echoed across the hardwood floors, slipping under the crack of the door as I stepped in. The ceiling was high, studded with antique copper fixtures that always made the room feel colder than it was. No, it never quite managed to outfreeze the looks I would get from the others. It was critique day, the last of the semester. Our final projects hung on mannequins and racks, up and down the narrow length of Parsons' second-floor studio, facing the arched windows that looked out on 13th Street. I'd barely slept the night before, hunched over the singer with my fabric pooling around my wrists like water. New York shimmered outside, blurred by rain, but that afternoon the world I cared about fit within those 4 white walls. We crowded around Mila Mendoza's display beads, silk, embroidery so fine it looked sketched by moonlight. The professor nodded, scribbling furiously in her notebook. Applause. Mila smiled, graceful and certain. I waited my turn, thinking about how I'd chosen to go strange this time. Strange was what I loved. Not ruffles and subdued palettes with their safe elegance, but bold lines, salvaged denim, sequined nets, ugly and electric and alive, like the city itself. The others called my style street clown, not always kindly. I couldn't help it. I liked ugly. I liked making things that shouldn't work, work. When the professor finally gestured to me, I felt the familiar cold wedge itself in my chest. I went to the rolling rack, wheeling out my designs. 3 looks, patchwork jeans fitted with tulle blossoms bulging out from the calves and hips, a jacket made from 30 thrift store shirts, deconstructed and sewn back together, a mesh dress threaded with strips of neon and reflective tape. The colors were loud, the silhouettes unstable. I set the rack in the center. Hands started to cover mouths. I stared at the floor as I explained, voice trembling, but trying for steady. These are about contradiction, I said. Beauty out of chaos. Making harmony from mess. I want people to see the narrative, the possibility, the joy in reclaimed things, in broken things put back together differently. A beat of silence. I looked up, felt the heat of their staring. It was Professor Gray who spoke first. Harmony is a strong word for this, she said, pulling the mesh dress out and holding it at arm's length. These are cacophonous. Intentionally, or is this a lack of discipline? A snicker from Rachel somewhere behind me. I heard Mila's voice, low and apologetic. It's just not refined. I don't know. Refined? Snorted Yen, another class star. It looks like Halloween at a recycling plant. The laughter stabbed. I felt my face flush, a sick, slow burn rising from my neck up. I opened my mouth, but found words couldn't climb the muscle in my throat. Gray held up my jacket, her mouth twisted. This is a waste of time and fabric. I'm not sure. Does anyone in this room disagree? She looked around, inviting the response. No one spoke. They just looked anywhere but me. My hands curled against my sides. Someone in the back said, "Maybe next year," in a stage whisper. I thought, for a moment, about defending myself. I stood there, swaying gently, cheeks burning, and felt something sharp catch in my chest. I wanted to fight, but all I could do was stand in my own patchwork, their laughter washing over me. Afterward, Professor Gray called me over quietly. She tried to soften her face, but her lips were still pinched. "You are stubborn, Sasha, but stubbornness won't make you employable," she said. "Let go of the clowning. No one in this city buys chaos for chaos's sake." I nodded and left. Outside, rain slicked the sidewalk. I stepped into the wet world, the city humming with yellow light and passing cars. my sketches sodden and weird under my coat. That night, my throat raw and chest hollowed, I called home. My mother picked up. She sounded tired, her voice thin through the static of old kitchen appliances. "You work too much for nothing, Sasha," she said. "With clothes like that, who will ever buy them? I tell the neighbors you're in school, but I don't mention for what. I don't know why you keep making it hard. Because I want it. I want to create things people haven't seen before," I said. I tried to make myself sound certain. But by the end of the call, I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. I washed out at Parsons, though just barely. I graduated with no honors, no internship, no friends. I took jobs folding clothes at the Humana in Brooklyn, picking flecks of thread off my jeans and sketching in the back room, listening to the humid rattle of the laundromat next door. I worried even my roommates, 2 East Flatbush art students, were more interested in the pizza I brought home than in me. I applied for work everywhere. Pattern making, retail, assistant on Broadway. My inbox filled with polite rejections, the kind that said, refreshingly creative, but never, start Monday. It became clear no one wanted what I made. On weekends, I walked through Chinatown and the garment district, running my hands across bolts of fabric, tracing seams in windows. The city seemed to sizzle and swell with other people's ideas. Neat, minimal, market-tested. Not the garbage I'd been mocked for. I started bringing home scraps, filling 2 duffels. At night, I'd make, just for me, coats out of curtain fabric, pants patched from laundry bags, mesh scarves drenched in cheap rhinestones from Canal Street. Once, I posted a jacket to Instagram and got a comment. "Ugliest thing I've ever seen, but it kind of slaps." I laughed, a sharp sound that felt like hope. 2 years passed like this. I worked retail, saved nothing, aged 10 lifetimes in humiliation. My mother rarely called. When she did, she asked if I'd found a real career yet. My father made a joke at the holidays. "At least you're not making costumes for drug dealers," and the conversation spiraled into silence. Meanwhile, I kept making my odd, ugly clothes. Sometimes I sullenly stitched until 3 a.m., every loose thread a tally of petty defeat, every bright patch a stubborn rebellion. It was an accident. In the end, a private DM from a thrift pop musician named Sumi Park, a friend of a friend who'd seen my Instagram. "Yo, can you make something for my show? As weird as you want?" she wrote. I barely believed it, but I said yes. I made her a coat, neon orange parachute silk, patchwork flannel, sleeves stuffed with old tulle, topped by a collar made of plastic pearls. I worked through the night, bleeding fingers, chasing something raw and honest. Sumi wore it at a gig in Bushwick. Someone snapped a photo. She tagged me. 3 days later, I had 50 new followers. A week later, a Brooklyn-style blog DM'd. "Interview?" I spent an hour sweating over the call. "What inspires you to make such uncommercial things?" the writer asked. "My failure," I blurted. She laughed. "Failure can be pretty cool." The next week, a stylist halfway across the city asked for a custom look. Then another. Then a tiny editorial, 5 pages, real models dressed in Sasha Janique. The layouts were glorious. Reflections on wet streets, bright patches glowing against graffiti and concrete. Every time someone asked if I felt vindicated, and every time the fear pulsed sharp in my chest. Any day now, it could collapse. But the work kept coming, and the city's appetite for ugliness, real, beautiful ugliness, seemed sudden and endless. In a year, I rented a studio in Bushwick, above a bodega. With big broken windows and bad plumbing, I began threading scraps together late into the night, humming as the sewing machine whirred, gathering models and friends for experimental shoots on the block as the city pressed in from every side. I did not go home, not even for Christmas. My mother left voicemails in broken, shaming English. My father told family friends I had gone,